Hello everybody, this is Tom Bronak. Today I'm going to give you an executive briefing on the dashboard system and how it can be used to regulate the infrastructure, the system development lifecycle, the recovery management process, and the compliance process. Let's start with the main screen. This is what the system's dashboard would look like, or the organizational structure. We start out with a top tier, which is the executive dashboard itself. Now, this dashboard was created based on enterprise resiliency and corporate certification, which is basically combining all recovery disciplines under one umbrella and providing worldwide compliance to all laws and regulations within the countries where your company does business. Sub dashboards are for the infrastructure, the systems development lifecycle, recovery dashboard, and a compliance dashboard. Another sub-tier would be for DR exercises for application recovery certification, or for the IT environment itself, or for business recovery plans for business units and the locations that house those business units. Today we're going to be taking this path from recovery management to the business recovery to an evacuation plan. And anytime you have an actual disaster event and you have a plan that's being exercised, action items can arise because of problems that are encountered. Whenever a problem is encountered, an action item is generated and forwarded to the Contingency Command Center, whose function is to monitor all active recoveries or recovery tests being exercised at this time. And there could be many. The Emergency Operations Center is charged with trying to keep the business going no matter what the circumstance, even in the event of a disaster. And executive management projects a single image of the company out to the rest of the world, including the media, clients, employees, the general community, which has included other companies that may be residing in the same building you're in, or other companies that reside in the building park that you're in or the business park that you're in, government agencies, and the families of anybody who may have been affected by the disaster event. All right. So let's take a look at the infrastructure first, because those are the people responsible for actually putting equipment in place and supporting the infrastructure itself. Today we're going to talk mostly about asset management. Now, asset management has to do with the acquisition, redeployment, and termination of equipment. Its main goal is to populate the global inventory of equipment and the site inventory of equipment located at a specific business location. Whenever a new application is requested, it has resources that are associated with it. So they're identified. An engineer would come in and recommend the types of equipment that should be looked at for purchase. They will be examined, and once examined, one piece of equipment will be purchased. That resource will be ordered, it will be delivered and installed, and then the inventory and the configuration will be updated. The inventory for the global and the configuration for the site itself. If a piece of equipment has to be redeployed because the person who was using the equipment either left the business or was moved to a new location, or given a promotion where he had more exotic equipment provided to him. In that case, the old equipment would have all of its personal data erased off it, because you don't want to have personal data on an old machine. It's a violation. Any unnecessary programs that are on that computer will be deleted as well. The equipment will be moved to a new location, installed, and then registered. By being registered, the catalogs will be updated appropriately. When the piece of equipment is terminated, it can be terminated because of a number of reasons, but just the same, if you're terminating it, the data on that equipment has to be erased to a much higher standard. And that standard being the Department of Defense's standard. The reason behind that is if you have sensitive information on equipment, then you could be violating regulatory requirements. For example, if you had medical information, you'd be violating HIPAA. If you had financial information, you would be violating a lot of rules. You have a choice then of either donating the equipment, selling it, or if you really want to, you can keep the equipment and use it for a disaster recovery location. I'm showing this now because I want to show you how easy it is to update this document or scrap. Now, if you're going to scrap the piece of equipment, you better make sure that you do it properly, because if the EPA finds your equipment in a dump site, you could be subject to a lot of fines associated with the Superfund, because the equipment has cancerous chemicals and all sorts of materials within it that could be harmful. So if you scrap it, make sure you scrap it in the right condition and you have it certified. Then you update the registration again within the inventories. The infrastructure team performs functions in support of all this. First of all, they pick up all the equipment, they perform all the erasures, they maintain the status of the equipment, where it resides, what activity is being taken against it, and they respond to the requester after the equipment has been, function has been performed against the equipment. Let me show you how this could work in a real-world environment. Suppose that you have a number of user locations all over the world, but they're not under your company control. They're under vendor control, they're at lease sites, and so on and so forth. And you really want to get your company under control. So you want to be able to take all these user sites and move them to a production facility. But what size should that production facility be? Well, when you do an inventory of all the sites, you can build that inventory and use that inventory to calculate the size of the production site that this equipment is targeted for. Now, you could have production sites in the Americas, in Europe, in Asia Pacific. But now, once you have all your production sites done, you still want to protect yourself. So you want to build a recovery site. How big should that recovery site be? Well, you can take the information from the inventory that you have in each production sites and calculate the recovery site size. When the recovery site is built, it first has a pool of available resources. In other words, it takes the size of everything that's required and puts resources at the recovery site equal to that size. As applications come through to be tested, resources are allocated and dedicated to the application being tested. You always have to monitor the resource availability pool against the dedicated pool to make sure you'll have enough resources available should a major crisis occur. The infrastructure group does more than just move equipment and make erasures. They're really a busy group of people. They do site preparation, including the facility, the environment, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, electricity, water, etc. They provide raised floors when needed. They do the wiring that's required. They set up a PBX and the phone. They coordinate the phones connected to the PBX or private branch exchange. The offices and seating arrangements are under their control. Onboarding of new people and transfers. They connect the Wi-Fi, internet, intranet, all those little cables that go into your computer. They're the ones who are responsible for routing them and making them available for you. They do workstation setup and maintenance. They provide you with supplies. And in general, they support the needs of the general staff. When going through this process, I was surprised to find that we could actually generate metrics from this. Because remember, the dashboard was originally created to provide a quick and easy way to get to the information you need at any time and from any place. It was not initially intended to provide metrics, but as we did the work here, lo and behold, metrics fell out. For example, We can calculate the total number of projects that are going on at any one time in the acquisition, redeployment, termination, or the use of infrastructure staff. And those projects can be tallied. We can say how many of them are active, how many are pending, the number of personnel that are assigned to those tasks, what their average hourly rate is, how many hours do they spend per task that they do, and then we can calculate the total hours, the active hours, and the pending hours, because these are active hours, these are pending hours. Come up with a total cost right there, come up with an active cost, and come up with a pending cost. So you can see, here's what I'm going to spend in total, here's what I spent so far, here's the remainder of what I have to spend. And I'm going to tell you, this chart is quite nice because if you change anything here, the chart changes automatically. We can also determine the percentage of completeness. I just never knew it was going to happen, but it's a price that was a nice one. Forms management and control, another big problem area in productivity, but here's an approach that will help you solve the problem. Provide the user with an interface that will help them select the right form. Okay, so that's that. Once the form is selected, it's pulled from the forms library. When it's pulled from the forms library and presented to the user, it has a help screen that will tell you what the form is, what it's all about, and what its usage is, and how do you fill out the fields. Then you fill out the fields and you hit enter, and the data entry validation comes along to make sure you've completed the fields properly. If you haven't, a message will be provided. You'll look at the message, read it, re-enter the field, and lo and behold, eventually you'll have the form completed correctly, and then the form will be sent to a forms router. The forms router will say, all right, who do I need to go to for authorization? Who do I assign it to? And then you route it from the first person it's assigned to the last person. You track it and you log the activity. You provide interactive communications between the person doing the work and the person who submitted the work, so that if changes come about, or if this person needs to get an updated status real quick, you can get that. Any kind of changes that have been made are identified, and a history log is maintained until finally the form and the work is completed and accepted. At that point, you can have a chargeback system used against a work order here and all those purchase orders associated with the people performing the work and the resources they used. And then that can be sent to accounting, and reporting can be used to analyze workflow and make improvements as necessary. Well, all this work is done by people, so we'd like to have some sort of way of tracking people and helping them improve their career path and get training. So a person has a title, there's a job description, there are functional responsibilities assigned to him, he uses tools, he has to have a skill level for those tools, he needs documentation, you have to know what his current skill level is and what future skills he needs to improve upon, schedule him for training as necessary, and always monitor the person's desired career path so that you're always helping that person achieve their own personal goal as well as the goals of the company. By doing that, you'll have a very happy employee and the morale will be very high. Ongoing work and work demands go up and down as they do. The workload may be more than the person that's been assigned to it, so you may have to get additional staff whose skills are. The availability pool has to be updated, training scheduled, and or recruitment done. Once training is scheduled, well, first of all, there's the Learning Skills Index. This is basically a form that has all skills that a person has, and it rates their skills as to a beginner, intermediate, or a senior person. That's also very helpful in identifying people for pools or identifying people for special assignments. When people have to be trained, sometimes their training is outside the realm of the company. It's not just computer-based training or classroom training. It could be vendor training. And in case of vendors, you get a certification. Sometimes vendors don't provide the training you need, but universities do. In that case, you can send the person to the university classroom or online class and provide them with accreditation for that. In either case, the certification and accreditation is added to the person's skill, and he's happy he got that. How the workflow system works is that an automated personnel system, an automated training system, and a user interface is provided. This user interface is either through the internet, intranet, but it's PC in, so it could be from any place at any time. The user has a profile, and his profile consists of his user ID, his password, the responsibilities he has assigned to him, and any kind of restrictions, so that this information can also be used for access controls. There's a tracking library of all activity currently being performed, performed in the past, and pending for future activity. There's a database management system for forms, and there's a library management system for those flat files that are not forms. When work occurs or submitted, it's logged. It's then assigned to an individual and tracked from the first individual to the last. The time spent working on it is tracked and recorded and measured. Analysis reports are produced so you can analyze how work flows through your company. And these reports can be provided to management, technical, someone like that. But by using this technique, you can always improve upon your workflow and improve your company's ability to perform work. All right, the next thing is the system development life cycle. We all have a system development life cycle, so let's just go take a look at it. System development life cycle. The first time through, somebody submits a new request. It goes to development. This is a one-time event. When it goes to development, it's finished. It goes to testing to make sure that it's working properly. If you have a VM environment, you can actually take a copy of the production environment, test it against that. You can also do recovery testing against that as well. Quality assurance, make sure you have all the supported data necessary. Production acceptance, we'll receive the data and use that data to set up the production environment, including runbooks. And then the production environment will actually run the application and provide support. Sometimes when doing support, you do root cause analysis of a problem, you'll find that in order to fix the problem, a change has to be made. So you make a change request. That change request has a version release. We're presently at release 1.0. We now want to go to release 1.1, and that's submitted to a change board for consideration. If they say you don't have the proper information available, then it goes back and you go into the loop until you can satisfy the change board's requirements. If it says okay, you go to repair the problem or implement an update or enhancement to an application. That goes through a maintenance cycle. Instead of going to development, now you're in maintenance. Now, the application developed in maintenance was 1.0. It's now loaded down to, or development is 1.0. It's loaded to maintenance is 1.1. It's updated appropriately, tested, quality assured, sent to production acceptance, and then put in production again, and support goes on. And this is an ongoing loop and ongoing events. The system development lifecycle actually looks like this. If you have a VM world, the testing can be done in a VM environment that's a duplicate of your production environment. So the testing against that environment will provide you with a better understanding if you're going to be successful in a production environment. You can also do recovery testing in that environment. So it too can say, yes, when it gets to production environment, I will also be able to recover it. The documentation from the successful test will be added to the quality assurance, production acceptance, and then production will be a little bit happier that we're going to be receiving a quality application. The production world also does backups, or they do bottle records management, so that requires a backup. In the old days, they would take backups to tape every day, then they combine them into a weekly, but they would be stored in an offsite vault. Today, we can have online data file backups for real-time or incremental backups, but we can also have a recovery point application that synchronizes data between the production environment and the disaster recovery environment. That's part of the VM world and VM and vSphere and vConnect and stuff like that. When the end user submits an application, that application could have a certain level of criticality. It can also be very important to the clients, and it's being run out of this particular location. So the user, of course, is afraid that if I lose this location due to a fire or a natural event, I would like to recover it. So he has to have a business recovery facility. So just like the data center has a disaster recovery facility, the business location has a business recovery facility. And that could be activated by simply evacuating the building and transporting the people to the recovery facility, where it can be connected to a production data center or to the disaster recovery site, depending on the circumstance. Work flows through the system development lifecycle in the following manner, and these are the steps that are performed. As work flows through the system development lifecycle, and it goes through its development, testing, quality assurance, and production acceptance, forms are required. So what we have is a front-end form for the application, and every time it passes a specific phase, that date will be listed here. So you can go down this form until you see a blank date. Click on that, and you'll be brought to a menu. The menu will then list the forms that are in process. Some of these forms can be green because they're completed. Some can be yellow because they're being worked on, and others can be red because they're not started yet. So you can go to the menu, see the status, click on the yellow, go to that yellow, and see what actually is happening at that one time. And you might even be able to drill down to the person doing the work and have a discussion with them. As work flows through your organization, you can take the purchase order that was originally assigned to it and couple that with a purchase order for the various tasks that were performed and the resources used to assist in performing those tasks. Calculate a total, tally the total, and now you have a total cost. Now that's important because it seems that projects are similar in nature. So if you're going to do a project that's very similar to a project that was already performed, you can go to this form and get an understanding of what work has to be done and how much it's going to cost you to get the work done. All right, so we've done the infrastructure, we've got the equipment in place, we've done the system development lifecycle, so we now have the application in place. Let's go to the recovery dashboard, see what happens there. Well, the recovery management dashboard is broken into three areas. One is for planning, one is for application recovery certification, or IT recovery, and the last is for business location recovery. These three functions are all under the command of the recovery dashboard. And I'll show you more about how that functionality works in a second. Status is reported to Executive Management Steering Committee, management, and everybody else. These people will require different data in a different format and during a different period of time. Executive management may be provided with status every quarter, steering committee every month, management every week, and people on the recovery teams every day. Library management is always done for recovery plans, training materials, articles, standards and procedures, and so forth. The actual recovery dashboard looks like this, and we're going to start seeing it a little bit later. And you'll see it better in detail then. Application recovery certification has to do with seeing if an application is certified as a high availability or a continuously available application. How it is actually performed is that when an application is ready for testing and it's tested, if it fails, it could be failing because of a gap or an exception or an obstacle that's impeding its ability to be tested. In both cases, it's fixed. Once it's fixed, it's ready for retesting. They go through it again, and they keep looping around here until they get the test successful. If it is successful, then the application is recovery certified for being either a high availability application, which is fail over, fail back, which means you have some period of time between the failure and the actual recovery, or it could be a continuously available application, or the gold standard, which in essence cannot allow for any interruption to business. And how that's done is you have two active environments. One is the production site, the other is the recovery site, both of them running the same application at the same time, at the same speed, and they're totally in lockstep. So if point A fails or the production site fails, it can be flipped over to the recovery site and picked up exactly where it left off. Sometimes you want to do this. This is called a flip-flop environment, where it's just simply a switch that goes from flip to flop, and that can be very helpful to a company that has to adhere to financial standards like demand deposits and stuff like that. Well, when doing recovery, you also have to be able to report on it. You have to report on the business recovery from the business units, and that's company operations, or the technical recovery, which not only is concerned about making sure that the business locations adhere to recovery standards, but also the technical environment as well. This information will be gathered and reported to the executive management in applications that have been certified, business recovery plans, and disaster recovery plans. This will help them generate a letter of attestment, which is done annually or quarterly depending on the need, and provided to the SEC or what other agency is necessary to prove that you have indeed adhered to your recovery requirements. All right, now let's look a little bit deeper into the disaster recovery side. First, in these boxes here, the way you have it arranged is the outside of the box. If you go to that hyperlink, if I can get it, should provide you with a written document. In this case, it's a disaster recovery exercise booklet. And this exercise booklet is a template. It has fill in the blanks. It has a revision history. If it's an active recovery, you can still revise it because you have to do a recovery test over and over again. Then you have yellow sections where you have to fill in information. There's also an appendix to go to at the end, because this form has a lot, or this booklet has a lot of appendices to it. And these appendices are used for generating contact lists and for everything else that is required to be completed in the booklet. They are meeting attendees, planning agenda, application equipment inventory, the pre-test activity. This application equipment inventory is in essence the all the applications equipment that has to be supported at the recovery site. And there's an inventory. Now this application equipment inventory, let's see, just like that, and there is one here, the profile, application profile. This is used to help enhance the global application catalog, because you can have programs like a configuration management database, which is part of ITIL, go out and gather the data on the files and stuff, on the applications, but it doesn't provide you with who owns the application or any specific names or what department it's associated with, because it just doesn't know that. So this is a supplemental form that works with that. So you can see what's the criticality, what's the description of the application, who's the management team, who are the subject matter experts that are associated with it, and whatever application components you have, so that you can then better understand what the profile is of this application that's being scheduled for DR testing. Now this is all done while you're actually creating the run book, the exercise book for disaster recovery. The exercise itself is like this. And remember I showed you that dashboard before, and I said I was going to show you more. This is it. You have statements of work to tell you how you got where you are. You have training material to provide you with a whole bunch of stuff. And one of the things I want to show you is this planning guide, because the planning guide provides you all the information about what's the dashboard look like, what is disaster recovery, how do you set it up, what's business recovery, how do you do that, including what's supply chains, and how do you protect salvage and restoration, so on like that. The entire book is written so that you can take the book on one side and take the exercise, the DR exercise booklet on the other hand, and fill in the blanks. We'll do the same for the business recovery plan. Again, we have the DR plan broken into 6 phases. The first is setting up the recovery site, where you take the pool of resources and you make them allocated. Second is the planning sessions, where everybody sits in a room and decides what's going to be done, what the goals are, what signifies successful or failure. The DR pre-test people then say, all right, these applications are going to be tested. They'll set up the environment for those applications. And then you actually do the actual test, where the application group comes in, uses their job run book, and exercises the application. Afterwards, a post-test is done, and that collects all the information that was achieved or accumulated through the life of the project. It's going to tell you the estimated time that you had and the actual time are different, any kind of problems that were encountered, and any comments made during the testing. All information is accumulated, gathered into a report and presentation, and provided in a post-mortem meeting where all the lessons learned from the disaster recovery event are enumerated, and people make recommendations for improvement. Those recommendations that are selected are then added to the recovery process, and by going through the recovery process, analyzing lessons learned, making recommendations for change and improvement, and going through it again, you will eventually achieve the best recovery plan possible for your organization. All right, how about business locations? All right, so we select the outside. We're going to get a manual, hopefully. Well, we are. Okay, this is the business continuity plan, components and sequences of descriptions. It's another one of those fill-in-the-blank things. It's a template, but it works. It's been working for a big organization for a long time. You put your logo in, you fill in the blanks, and you go through the whole document and just fill in whatever is necessary. The thing I wanted to show you is that if you have a site failure and you have to evacuate the site, normally what happens is you go to an assembly point, and once you're at that assembly point, a head count is performed, and you'll wait further orders from management. In this particular case, may not be the wisest thing to do, because today with terrorist activity being what it is, they can turn around and plant explosives around this assembly point because they know about it, but fake a disaster event in your building, so everybody is forced out of the building, and they go to the assembly point where all of a sudden the explosives are set off and they kill a lot of people. Their plan was not to hurt your business location, but to knock down your people. So with that in mind, it may be wiser not to go to an assembly point, but let everybody disperse and have them call in to a predefined number or use some sort of cell phone app so that they can log in and provide the head count that you need. Again, if anybody is missing, you have to take further action to locate them. And this is a very safe thing to do today, especially with the use of mobile phones being as big as it is today. And it safeguards your staff better, and it defeats the terrorist opportunity of generating a plan like that. The other thing is, if you have an evacuation where you're going to be required to go to a business location or business recovery site, well, it'd be nice to provide people with instructions how to get there. So you can provide with a driving map from Google or MapQuest or anything like that. But again, with today's use of the GPS, everybody has a GPS in their car or even on their app in one of their phones. So it may be just as wise to provide them with the location of the business site that they should go to for recovery. And that could change, as we're going to talk about in a second. Okay, so now what happens, we go and we have to evacuate the building because we've just had an incident and then we have to do that. So I'm going to go through this exercise here to show you how everything works together in one fell swoop. All right, this is a site evacuation plan. It's really generic because every site has it. Now, the first thing I want to show you is that the site has to maintain a list of contacts. Who's executive management, who's on the steering committee, who's in the emergency operations center, who's in the contingency command center, what are the recovery team members, who are the recovery vendors I use, the supply chain vendors, the vendor list in general, the business recovery site personnel that I have to contact, and the disaster recovery site personnel that I have to contact. Now, the recovery chain vendors are very important because they're delivering supplies to your location, but then you have to sell them, hey, that location is no longer viable, go to the secondary site and make your deliveries there. And you can see how quickly you can get to this information. And that's the key to this whole dashboard concept, is how quick you can get to it. Now, all your DRT members, the same thing. You can click on that and see a list of DRT members. The location recovery plan is that business recovery plan I talked to you before. Now, let's talk about what events are occurring. A disaster event occurs. Well, what is it? Actions to be taken. Recognize the disaster event and report to DRT manager. A fire was recognized in the break room, and a microwave oven caught on fire, and it's generated a lot of smoke. Well, a disaster has to be declared, but who can declare a disaster? Well, you designate certain people within your organization that can do that. They turn around and communicate to the contingency command center that a disaster event has occurred. The DR team leaders are notified, and the DR teams are notified, and they sweep it to action. A recovery plan is initiated. First thing you want to do is get everybody out of the building, so a primary site evacuation plan is activated. Fire alarms sound, and the fire marshals escort people out of the building. They go to the assembly point, which is maybe not the wise thing to do, but they do, and a head count is taken. And lo and behold, people who were at the defined count have found that there's 2 people missing, and that's a problem. So with the 2 people missing, management gets involved, and they want to say, well, what happened? So they want to drill down to the person actually performing the test. In this case, it was me. And they click on me, my name, and they get this information: who I am, what company I represent, I'm a contractor, what my phone number is, what my email is, and what's my IM if they want to get to me directly through instant message. Now, if you're in a company that uses Link or any other IM support device, everybody is on it. So if you click on their name, you'll get all that information. Well, since we have a failure, an action item is initiated. And the action item says, during a site evacuation, 2 people missing from the head count. So we're going to continue looking for them. The command center is notified. They seek advice from the command center manager. We obtain instructions from the command center, and we follow the instructions. And the management instructions are saying, go to a secondary site for further interviewing and or to continue your work. We notify the first responders of the missing people, and the responses we get are that the police department says, no, we haven't arrested anybody, we didn't see anybody leave the building, we have perimeter established. The emergency medical team says, no, I haven't taken anybody to the hospital, nor have I treated anybody for any kind of problems yet. Then the fire department steps up and says, well, we went through that building in an initial search, and there is a lot of smoke. Now that we know there's 2 people missing, we'll initiate a secondary search, and we'll go back into the building. The contingency command center is then notified that the first responders were told of the problem and that the fire department is going to take a secondary sweep in more detail. Well, finally, some good news comes back, and the fire department says that they found the 2 people. They are both unconscious and suffering from smoke inhalation, but they're alive. So the first responders leap into action, and emergency medical technicians provide on-site treatment and then rush the people to the local community hospital. We're all concerned for their speedy recovery. Management, in turn, notifies the families of the people, and they rush to be alongside their loved ones at the hospital. Word finally comes back from the hospital that the 2 recovered people will make a full recovery and will be released from the hospital in a day or 2 at the most. Well, everybody is euphoric, and everybody is celebrating, and we just, well, able to save the lives of 2 of our buddies. In this case, management is going to look fabulous because they took the time to take the head count and swung into action immediately and perhaps saved the lives of 2 people. So in the eyes of the community, management looks good. And if they didn't have this information available to them quick enough, how could they respond quick enough? So that's another important issue to remember about the dashboard. The Contingent Command Center is notified of the head count and of any missing people. The EOCs provide instructions to evacuate the personnel, which is basically, they say either go home or to a secondary location for questioning. Okay. Primary site is protected by security department and the local police throughout the whole disaster. When the local police leave, your own internal security department has to take over because you have intellectual property, equipment, facilities, and everything else there. So you don't want anybody looting it. The business recovery site is notified then that you are going to, or you also call salvage people in and restoration people to start salvaging the building and restoring everything. You call up the recovery site, and the business recovery site states that they are full because other companies have also declared a disaster event, and their first come, first served policy is in effect. Wow, that's another action item. And this one may be more difficult to overcome than the first. So, we've been notified that the disaster recovery site is full. Executive management is told, they call up the site, please, can you get us in? The site says, no, it's impossible, we are full. You have to take other plans. Well, personnel are then directed to go home and await further instructions from management. Those who are able to log on to continue to work from home are told to do so. Those people who are authorized log on and start their work, but of course the work is only piecemeal compared to what was going on before. So now management has to tell clients that the volume of work that can be processed is limited, and we may not be able to provide them with the service level that they're used to. That could also not only be affecting the clients, but it also could be affecting our regulatory requirements. Unauthorized site is looked for and finally located through a reciprocal agreement or a rental agreement. And finally, we find a location, but the location requires equipment, and the clock is still running, and we're well beyond our recovery time. Finally, resources arrive, and operations starting to come back to normal. Work starts up. Personnel is stressed and working very long hours to help the company retain business and satisfy client demands. Well, word is coming back finally from the salvage and restoration team that they're pretty much finished with their work and the site is pretty much ready for activation. So management is anticipating that the primary site will be available in a day or 2. Luckily, the primary staff is available, is working, because they sent over a management team to inspect the site and said it's okay. Unfortunately, the recovery plan to go from the alternate site to the primary site again is different because you're at a different alternate site. So you have to develop a new plan. So the Emergency Operations Center, the Contingent Command Center, and the DR teams all get together and build a recovery plan. The newly developed return plan is initiated and people are returned safely. The entire staff is returned to the primary site. Normal business operation is restarted. Now the claims are starting to come in from all the customers and the regulatory people. But management can't really be concerned about that yet because we really haven't figured everything out. So we have a post-mortem and lessons are learned and teaching events taught. And then management says, all right, I finally understand why recovery planning is so important. And they turn around, management holds a meeting, they speak to the employees to thank them for their efforts. The media is briefed on what happened, and the clients are fully informed of both the failures encountered and the progress that will be made in the future to overcome these problems from ever happening again. Well, even though this particular case, the management didn't look good, it was at least good because they've made a full disclosure to the clients, and everybody should be happy going forward. Let's just take a look at compliance, and then we'll end this thing here. Okay, the compliance dashboard is what are the laws and regulations we have to adhere to worldwide? What is my audit university to make sure we're in compliance with that? How do we eliminate gaps and exceptions and obstacles which could impede our ability to perform? And how do we generate a letter of attestation saying that we are in compliance? An audit history has to be generated of what we did in the past and what we plan to do in the future. All gaps and exceptions have to be identified. All obstacles have to be identified. Gaps and exceptions mitigated, and obstacles mediated. The laws that have to be adhered to are here, but these are only part of the laws. There's many, many, many more. Strategies for eliminating audit exceptions are here. A sample Sarbanes-Oxley overview is provided here for sections 302, 404, and 409. 404 is what mostly everybody's doing. It's basically making sure that your accounting is up to speed and can be looked at any time. You have to report on your compliance as well. So not only company operations, the technical side, all put together and perform compliance accounting and generate compliance reports that are given to the executives, and from that, a letter of attestation can be generated. One final thing, this is an overview of how Sarbanes-Oxley can be done from start to end. All right. Now we've pretty much gone through the extent of the entire dashboard from executive all the way through, but we haven't looked at the executive side yet, so let's take a look at that. The executive dashboard is what I said was used for creating the enterprise resiliency and corporate certification. All right. First things, let's take a look. From there, we can get to all the dashboards. These are dashboard links over here for presentation material. There's the dashboard links over here for videos that support them. I'll just give you a real fast look so you can see. Here's an executive overview. It's a presentation. This is an executive overview that's on YouTube. And since most people don't like to read, they can just simply go through this instead. And it's me talking, so you heard me once, that's enough. Then we have all the documents that have to be produced during this phase. There are 7 phases in this, and each phase has 13 steps. So here's all the documents that have to be produced for this phase. And if it's green, it's already produced. So you can click on any of these documents at any time. Let's take a look at a planning agenda, for example, or an action items. This is the action items. And any of these things can be clicked on, you'll receive the information you need. Again, there's training materials because people have to be trained. Each phase has a training guide for that phase, so you can go through that. And there are also application migration guidelines. So if you want to see how an application is migrated, you can go through that. These are extensive documents. That's why I'm just not going to be able to provide them all in a short period of time. And we have all sorts of other documents that are pretty much important and nice to have, and I'm sure you enjoy watching and looking at them. All right, let's get back to the executive overview, executive document. Committee here, executive committee, steering committee, form a needs analysis. You can create a business plan. You can even create a project plan. So we have a project plan that lays out everything for this task. Again, how quickly do we get to it? You can define all the laws. You can have business location recovery plans, exercise booklets, and a management dashboard. And you can also go, in this case, to an actual site evaluation. So now you've seen all of the dashboards from the hierarchy down and reviewed everything. Well, why are dashboards useful? It gives you a quick access, as you've seen, to accurate and current information. It can be accessed from anywhere at any time. You can drill down to the person performing the current task, and I showed you how we did that. You can connect to the person performing the work for updates and or to provide assistance to them. You can get status, or you can provide subject matter expert assistance to that person. It supports conference calls and remote meetings, so you can have the accurate and current data in front of you when you're having these meetings. It reduces the confusion and the chaos among the staff, and is the most efficient way of doing projects or actually doing real-time work within the company. And it will allow you to be better able to complete projects on time and within budget. Well, if you have any questions regarding anything that we spoke about here or would like to get more information, feel free to contact me at brownit@dcag.com, and I'll respond to any inquiries you have. Well, my goal is, if you believe that this approach can help your company improve performance and bring products and services to market more rapidly, then please contact me. And here's my information for contact. I would actually love to assist you in integrating this approach within your environment. Now remember, this approach uses your existing data, so you do not have to change information to adopt this product. It is just simply going to provide you with a means to get to the information you need more quickly than you're presently able to do. Well, thank you for your time. I certainly hope you appreciated this presentation and that you gained something from it. And I hope that we can continue our relationship going forward. Thank you so much. Bye now.